good and bad for us, but we chose to eat what kind of food? We chose to eat food that are tasteful and sometimes not really good for us. But now that we learned from our previous lesson that we are living in the Day of Atonement, we are supposed to what? We are supposed to fast. Fast from what? Are we gonna not eat? No, but we are supposed to fast from stimulating food. So just a little side note here before we go to our present lesson. Stimulant food or stimulant means a substance that raises levels of physiological or nervous activity in the body, so it increases the activity of the brain chemicals. So whatever that stimulate your brain, that means that is a stimulant food. So your nervous activity is stimulated. So what are the examples of stimulating food? Give one example. Coffee, yes. What else?
Coffee too strong.
Yeah, yes, caffeine.
If you drink coffee, I had a friend in Arkansas. It was like that.
Tremors, because the coffee is too strong?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So does it stimulate your brain and nervous? That makes you nervous?
Start drinking, yes.
Yes, absolutely. So that means coffee is a stimulating food. What else? Green tea, okay, whatever tea it is, like black tea, jasmine tea, green tea, all those tea that has caffeinated in it is a stimulant. What else? Spicy food, okay. What else? I know a lot of us love this. Chocolate. Why is it that a chocolate is a stimulant food?
Alcohol.
Yes, alcohol too, but why is a chocolate a stimulant food? Because it has this chemical called theobromine or phenylthylamine that activate the chocolate. So the substance of the chocolate, the substance in there called phenylthylamine, this is the same substance when you fell in love. So that's why chocolate is given every Valentine's Day, because it is also a stimulant food. What else? Huh? Yes. What else? MSG is also a stimulant because it stimulates your taste buds. And how about meat? Do you think the meat is also a stimulant? Yes, and that's why it is also addictive. It says there, okay, this is on when you search for it, okay? It says a thick, juicy steak can be addictive because the blood in red meat contains albumin, hemoglobin, and gamma globulin, chemicals that activate the body's opioid receptors, just like heroin, albeit and on a far smaller scale. So meat contains addictive substances that these feel-good stimulants, similar to caffeine and speed, affect our central nervous system, hypoxanthine, isonosinic acid, and guanylate acid. So all of this food is just like the example of the stimulant or stimulating foods that the Lord is teaching us to fast. So we need to fast from this stimulant food so we can prosper our health. And now we are going to our present lesson study, and this present lesson study will teach us what kind of diet the Lord wants us to follow. So now let's read our memory text. So our memory text is found in John 3 3 John verse 2. It says, "Beloved, I wish above all things that thou mayest prosper and be in health, even as thy soul prospereth." And from the Review and Herald, October 29, 1903, "When men yield their hearts to unbelief, they place themselves under the control of Satan, and none can tell to what lengths he will lead them." So here in our present lesson, as I have said, this is really a good lesson because the Lord will teach us what kind of diet the Lord wants us to follow. So the first subtopic that we have is entitled, okay, can we put the lesson 11? Sorry. The first subtopic that we have is restoration. So, Brother Abel, can you put lesson 11? Because this is lesson 10. Sorry. Give me 1 second. Okay, let's move on. First subtopic, restoration. Letter A question. How do we know that before Christ comes, there must be a restoration of principle as given in the beginning? How do we know that? From the Bible verse that is given in here. Let's put this like this. Okay. It says there, verse 16. I'd like to read Jeremiah 6, verse 16. It says, Thus saith the Lord, standing in the ways, and see, and ask for the old paths, where is the good way, and walk therein, and ye shall find rest for your soul. But they said, We will not walk therein. So how do we know? What does a word here that is mentioned? It says what? Old path. So old path is mentioned in here in the Bible verse. So old means it already existed way before. That's why it's old. So here in the Bible verse, the Lord is teaching us to walk in the old paths, to follow the old way. And we will know what is the old way of that diet on the letter B question. You want to say something?
Yes,
Okay.
Apostle Peter, he preached, he mentioned that before the coming of the Lord, coming back, is the restoration of the principles which God established at the creation, like the Sabbath, the so matrimony, the dietary, now the health reform it will be restored before Jesus comes. Coming.
Absolutely. So all of those things that the Lord has said that they forgot, it should be restored. And one of it is the health reform message. So on the letter B question, we will know what kind of diet the Lord wants us to follow. And question, what was the original diet and why did herbs become necessary? So I want to read Genesis 1 verse 29. It says there, And God said, Behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in the which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat. So what kind of meat the Lord has given to us? Is it like the literal meat, or the grains, fruits, and vegetables? So, yes, it's the grains, fruits, and vegetables. So here in our note, it says, grains, fruits, I like to read the second paragraph, okay? Grains, fruits, nuts, and vegetable constitute the diet chosen for us by our Creator. So is this clear? Yes. So this kind of diet, or the vegetarian or vegan diet, is the kind of diet that is chosen by us, by our Creator. These foods, prepared in as simple and natural a manner as possible, are the most healthful and nourishing. They impart a strength, a power of endurance, and a vigor of intellect that are not afforded by a more complex and stimulating diet. So, if we are going to eat natural and simple food, what it's going to do in our body? It will give us strength, endurance, and vigor of intellect. So is this very important? Yes. Power of endurance for what? To be what? To be temperate in all things. And vigor of intellect for what? So that we can understand the word of God more clearly. So our mind will not be clouded by those things. Yes.
One thing that we have to consider is that the desire of God is to extend our life. Mm-hmm. And the reason that they give us a special diet it was because He wanted to have a long life, even if we live in a sin life. That's why our first fathers, they lived 900 years, 800 years. But because of the diet that we changed, now we live only 100 years.
Not even.
Not even that, but I mean, that's a miracle if you find somebody who lives 100 years old. Uh-huh. But I don't know how long I'm going to live, but I mean, I feel like I'm not going to get to 100 years. Mm-hmm. So this is the love of God. He wants to extend our life based on the diet, and we have to consider that.
Absolutely. Thank you. Brother Daniel?
He wants to have a clear mind.
Of course, yes.
Not because of the length, but especially because to have a more spiritual perception and a clear mind to understand the precepts of the Lord.
Thank you. Okay, letter C question. How do we know it was not God's will to permit flesh food? How do we know? We have given here a Bible verse, and I'll just like to read verse 20 of Deuteronomy 12. It says, "When the Lord thy God shall enlarge thy border as he hath promised thee, and thou shalt say, I will eat flesh, because thy soul longeth to eat flesh, thou mayest eat flesh whatsoever thy soul lusteth after." So here, the word, it says lusted. So you lusting for flesh. So you craving for meat will not help you to be restored. And remember, the Lord wants us to restore back to the original diet. In our note, it says, by departing from the plan divinely appointed for their diet, the Israelites suffered great loss. And we will go on to the story later on, okay, of what happened, why the Israelites died, okay. Letter D. Why did God prohibit the eating of fat and blood? So, see, even fat. So let's read the Bible verse that is given in here from Leviticus 3 verse 17. It says, "It shall be a perpetual state for your generations throughout all your dwellings, that ye eat neither fat nor blood." 17 verse 11, "For the life of flesh is in the blood, and I have given it to you upon the altar to make an atonement for your souls. For it is the blood that maketh an atonement for the soul." And verse 20 of Acts 15, it says, "But that we write unto them that they abstain from pollution of idols, and from fornication, and from things strangled, and from the blood." So, side note here. Why do you think God prohibits us to eat this fat and blood? What does the researcher or the scientist says? Fat for fat intake. So the study of a study of more than, I'm just going to read it, okay? A study of more than 117,000 individuals followed for 27 years, evaluated diet and stroke risk. So those with the highest vegetable fat intake had a 12% lower stroke risk. But those with the highest non-dairy animal fat intake had a 16% increase stroke risk. So you see, if you remember in our review lesson, what is the Bible verse that is given in there? From Isaiah 22 verse 14. I'd like to read that, okay? It says, "Surely this iniquity shall not be purged from you till you die." So purge means what? atonement or cleansing, right? And it says, when will this start to be a sin? Because it says, surely this iniquity, right? So, when will this meat eating become a sin? When Jesus went to the most holy place. So from 1844 until the present time, because the health reform message was already given to us. So, as I have said, meat eating cannot be purged from us till we die. And this is proven by science. Like, for example, if you have atherosclerosis. So atherosclerosis is fat deposits in your vessels. So that is plaques. So if there is a lot of fats in your vessels, it will just be in there on your vessels. And it will just grow and grow and grow. And then later on, you will have a heart attack. So when you have a heart attack, the doctor will do this thing called CABG, or what you can say coronary artery bypass. So this procedure will never ever remove your fats. It just bypass it. Or if the doctor will just do the balloon angioplasty, which they just put a stent on it. So they just put a stent, but did they remove your fats in there? No, it will never ever cleanse. And that's why, is the Bible clear that it will not be purged? Of course it is true. It can never be purged. It will just stay there. They will just do some first aid thing for you to just live a little bit longer, but it will never be purged from you.
God prohibited the blood because the chemical components that are against the body. But it was another connotation, because it was God is ordered that the blood is
Life.
Huh?
Blood is a life.
No, right. It's a symbol of cleanse us from our sin. Mm-hmm. You know, and then the same as well as with the fat.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so now that is very clear. Any thoughts before we go to Monday? Okay, let's move on to Monday. Ready for Jesus. So, letter A question. Why were so many of the Hebrew people destroyed in the wilderness? What did the Lord give to the Israel? What kind of food? God gave them what? Manna. But are they happy to eat manna or angels' food? No, they want fish, they want the meat, they want the leeks, the onion. All the food is very appetizing. And they keep on murmuring and ask. Imagine they said it's better for them to become slaves just to eat those foods. So how slavery it is to become slaves to appetite. So here in our note, I just like to read this, just the last part. It says there, let us remember that time is short. Tell the people that golden opportunities for service are being neglected. All nations are to be warned and instructed to seek the Lord without delay, for that mighty angel who deceives so many of the angelic hosts is working untiringly to set in an operation his seductive wiles, with which he has deceived millions, and through which he desires to deceive the whole world. The work of which the prophet Zechariah writes is a type of spiritual restoration to be wrought for Israel before the end of time. So, here in letter B, question. How does that apply to us in preparing for the Advent? Brother Daniel?
Yes. After so many years of slavery, their habits and pagan beliefs, they couldn't understand the depthness of the law of God. So when they left Egypt, he changed their diet so they could understand in depthness. And he even gave them the ceremonial law to help them understand the depthness of of his law. And even then, they couldn't understand it.
Yes.
And because of health reasons and clarity of mind, there was a special diet, which is the same with us. At the end of time, we gotta have also that clearness of mind to understand the depthness of the Ten Commandments, the obedience to Him. And because of bad diets, we just practically can understand it. So us also are to follow the same steps. We need a special diet to have clarity of mind.
Absolutely, and that's why if you eat those food that it says that God prohibited, your mind is clouded. You can, I can say it's like a brain fog. You know, if I don't know if any one of you felt that or experienced brain fogginess, but yeah, I did. So of course, it is very true. It will cloud your mind and will not help you understand what the Lord wants you to understand. So I'd like to read the note in here because this is a lesson that the Lord is giving to us. It says, the history of ancient Israel is a striking illustration of the past experience of the Adventist body. God led his people in the Advent movement even as he led the children of Israel from Egypt. And the great disappointment, their fate was tested, as was that of the Hebrew at the Red Sea. Had they still trusted to the guiding hand that had been with them in their past experience, they would have seen the salvation of God. So, we all know that the Adventist wants to follow which diet? The Leviticus 11. But that diet is not the original diet, right? So, again, as I said, God's will for us is to return back to the original diet to get ready yourself for the coming of Jesus Christ. That's why the title is Ready for Jesus. So how are we going to get ready? We're going to get ready ourselves as well by returning back to the original diet. You want to say something, Brother Abel?
Everything is based on the second coming of Christ, right? Because we keep it a special diet because we try to sanctify our body, which is not ours, it belongs to God. And also, if I don't know if any of the brothers consider that every time the Bible speaks about food, they also add idolatry. So we have to have the special food for either the body and the spiritual, because we have to prepare our body and our mind, our spiritual life, based on the second coming of Christ.
Absolutely. And the Lord also gave us the examples and admonition from what happened to the Israel people, right? So that's why if we want to repeat the same thing, because remember, it is already written, it's written in the Bible. So if we want to repeat the same thing, then we are repeating what the Israel people has done. Then is there any excuse for us? No, right? Because it's already written in the Bible. So now that we know what the consequences is, we should know better. We should know the things that we have to do. Any more thoughts for Monday before we move on to Tuesday? Okay, let's move on to Tuesday. So there's two pots in here, okay? Tuesday and Wednesday. The first pot of manna, and the other one is the flesh pots of Egypt. It's up to us which pot do we want to choose, okay? First, we're going to move on to the pot of manna. So, upon leaving Egypt, for what did the Hebrews soon clamor, and what did God do about it? So, what are they clamoring about? What are they crying about? They're crying for what? For meat. And imagine, not just like the little kids are crying, the old people are crying too. And not just one people or 10 people. All of them, thousands of people are like, imagine, like crying for meat. So that's how desperate they are. So, what happened? What happened? Yes.
The Egyptian believers, they were complaining, and they followed in the matter of the type of food that they were consuming during their slavery.
Yes, yes. And what did God do about it since they are really asking for it? God did what? God gave it to them, right? So in our note, I'd like to read the second paragraph, okay? God might as easily have provided them with flesh as with manna, but a restriction was placed upon them for their good. It was his purpose to supply them with food better suited to their wants than the feverish diet to which many had become accustomed in Egypt. The perverted appetite was to be brought into a more healthy state that they might enjoy the food originally provided for man, the fruits of the earth, which God gave to Adam and Eve in Eden. It was for this reason that the Israelites had been deprived in a great measure of animal food. So, the Lord's plan is to what? To prepare them. That's why the Lord has given them that kind of diet. It's for them to prepare their mind and their body so that they can understand what the Lord will teach to them. So, letter B. How did the angels prepare a better diet for them? Well, I already mentioned that the diet that is prepared for them is the angels' food, or what we call manna. Right? Letter C. How was this food memorialized? So it was memorialized by what? Ark of the Covenant. So the golden pot of manna was preserved by God in the Ark of the Covenant as a remembrance that this is the will of God. This is the type of diet that the Lord wants. Okay. And we can back up with that on the note that in here, but I'm not going to read it, okay? It's clear. Okay. So let's move on to, yes, Brother Jose, before we moved on.
Because when the note says for 40 years, they were daily reminded by this miraculous provision. And our negativities, something, 40 years, too much, in the same food, we try to do varieties of food and so, but no, it's just, if we're just focused on what is good for us, we have to go for it, we have to experience, by practice how our bodies work, how what they need actually, For nowadays, in this society, I repeat again, the French or the Italian or the Mexican, Peruvian, Asian food. So they present
diverse food,
the variety, but they don't actually. If we analyze all these things that are danger for our health, they don't explain about be careful with this because the health is affected or something. No, it's just the good thing of the food, the mixture and those things. So this is what but they don't explain that the hospitals are full of
yes.
people who are sick.
Yes. Okay. Any more thoughts before we move on? Okay, let's move on to Wednesday, the flesh pots of Egypt. So we already know what contained in that pots, okay? All those food that is very delicious because that's the type of food that they ate before in Egypt. It says there on the Bible verse, it's the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, onions, garlic, the fish. Yes. So, in short, I guess marinated, as you can call it, because they mention onions and garlic. So that means it's like a marinated meat. So, of course, it tastes good to them. So, Letter A question. Who were the first to complain about their diet? What was the specific type of flesh? And how do we know that they did not long for just the side dishes that were prepared with it? Okay, because the side dishes that is mentioned is the cucumbers, right? So who were the first to complain? Yes, the mixed multitude. The leader is the leader of the complainants. What happened to the leader of complainants? They what? They died. Yes, and we know the story. They cried and cried for the meat, and then what? Because they've been crying for it, the Lord was very angry. So that's why He allowed them to eat the quails of the meat. And then what happened when they eat it? It came out in their nostrils. So, and then they died. Okay? So the curse was given to them. It was the plague. Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, it says that, and we realize that some of them, those who were most guilty in their murmurings, it says that some of them who were most guilty, and I'm reading from the paragraph, middle of the paragraph, it says, those who had been the most guilty in the murmurings were slain as soon as they tasted the meat for which they had lusted. So the meat was probably barely going into their lips or their mouth, and they were slain.
Yeah.
And it says if they had submitted to have the Lord select their food for them, and had they been thankful and satisfied with the food of which they could eat freely without injury, they would not have lost the favor of God, and they wouldn't have been punished for their rebellious murmurings.
Yes, absolutely. Want to say something?
Brothers, every time people ask me why I'm a vegetarian, religious people, they say, food is good, and if I eat meat all my life, and I'm really strong, and they are really strong,
Mm-hmm.
They are stronger than vegetarian people, to be honest. But I mean, I tell them, you know what? God didn't create us to kill each other.
Mm-hmm.
This is the main reason. It's not because you cannot eat it, but to eat it, you have to kill it. That's why we are allowed to drink milk, because we don't have to kill the animals. Eggs, we don't have to kill the animals. Until that, I given an example, but they always related, the food from being strong and healthy.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason of eating, not the purpose food that God provides us, is the end is death.
Mm-hmm.
But not just the death that we know, but the eternal death. And this is what I say, the reason of the food is of God is to extend the life. If we don't consider that, why? Because if you see after this example, when they give the birds to eat it, they told them, we're gonna shorten the life of the human, because they are foolish. They don't understand. They don't want to listen to me. So I'm gonna let you eat what you want, but your life is gonna be shorter. This much.
Okay, I'd like to read the note, okay? Because the note is very important. It says, the Hebrew became wary of the food prepared for them by angels and sent to them from heaven. They knew it was just the food God wished them to have, and it was helpful for them and their children. So did they knew? They knew that it is good for them. So for us, we also knew what food the Lord wants us to eat. But our appetite is very strong. And remember, the only way to regain the Eden is to practice what? We need to practice strict temperance. So if we cannot control our appetite, we crave maybe once in a while. It says just crave it once in a while. Or maybe you just want to taste it sometimes. Will we ever regain back to the original diet? No, we don't. So we don't have an excuse, because this message was already given to us. And if we don't take heed to this message, it might be our fall. Okay? You want to say something?
Yeah. Sister, I just remember what happened in my life. I remember we used to eat meat every day. You know, my father, he used to eat every day. And one day he say from nowhere, he said, "We're not going to eat meat today," like that. And my mother, what's wrong with your dad? And also us, you know, we say, well, I mean, what happened? Okay, make a rice, some eggs, beans, and a salsa. Okay, we start eating. And then in the middle of the lunch, she said, "You know what? I can handle it. Go get meat because I need it. I need meat." And then my mom start cooking again meat for my dad, and then he give us meat. Also, you know, food they make a more simple persons, humbly, you know, and appreciate what we have. I wonder if I give just a tomato, rice, and beans to people that eat meat, they're
That's
not going
just
to be
a side dish
satisfied.
for
Not
them.
satisfied, you know. It's not tasty enough.
Yeah.
But for me, and I'm pretty sure for all vegetarian people, you know, having a tomato, lettuce, it's good enough.
Yeah.
You know, they make you different taste, and now you can appreciate the taste of the lettuce. You know, before it's no taste.
Yeah.
So it has to be
Like
meat.
bland
So
food.
you see the
Not very
difference between-
appetizing. It's
yeah,
just,
of
what
the
are you
taste
going
of
to
the
eat?
world,
Just lettuce?
or the taste of the love of God.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, let's continue on reading with our note. It says, Satan, the author of disease and misery, will approach God's people where he can have the greatest success. So who's the author of diseases? It is Satan. And how will he create these diseases? He will tempt you to do what? He will tempt you to eat those bad foods that you're really craving for. So he will deceive you first. It's just because these foods are really very appetizing to eat. He will deceive you, and then he will make you eat it. But at the end, you're the one who will suffer. So continue on reading. It says he has controlled the appetite in a great measure from the time of his successful experiment with Eve in leading her to eat the forbidden fruit. He came with his temptation first to the mixed multitude, the believing Egyptians, and steered them up to a seditious murmurings. So who has control over appetite? It is no other than Satan. And that's why there was a rebellion in Israel, just because they wanted to eat meat, just because of appetite. So continue on reading. It says, they would not be content with the healthful food which God had provided for them. Their depraved appetites crave the greater variety, especially flesh meats. So, yeah, that's why I have read to you earlier, right, that meat is very addictive. It has that addictiveness because of what contains it. Okay? So that's why the Lord is telling us to abstain. Yes.
Now, sister, you're a nurse, okay?
Okay.
Is the body actually is capable? I mean, I don't know if they say capable to process meat, the body.
Well, technically yes, but there's a bad effects.
It's exactly
you are capable
what you
to process it, but
It's
there's
exactly what you say
effects.
about chocolate. If you read about chocolate, you know, our body is not capable to digest chocolate because it's a grease, it's too thick. And how the body do it, I don't know, but you know, I think the body has been, well, he has adapted to process all kind of meat at this moment. You say that, you know, we used to say that from the people from where I'm from, Mexico City. We eat everything and we don't get sick. You know, we eat from the street and we don't get sick. But if somebody from United States go there and start eating on the street, they got sick right away. Or maybe just for the
You're
water.
not immune to it.
Yeah, but we're immune. So this is what happened with the problem with the meat. But now, as a vegetarian, can we fall on the same problem? Yes, because we're not going to eat meat. But if you put too much variety of food, that's also considered a sin. And Apostle Paul is going to tell you that.
Absolutely. And that's going to be an in-depth study of what you're mentioning about food combining in the diet. And even though you're a vegetarian, there's still some food that is very stimulating when you like mix it all together. Okay. All right, letter C. Letter C question, because we don't have that much time. Okay. Letter C. What are we to call this deliberate act of rebellion? Okay, there you go. So it says on the Bible verse, it says, and they sinned yet more against him by provoking the Most High in the wilderness. And verse 32 of Psalm 78, for all this they sinned still and believed not for his wondrous work. So, the word mentioned here is sinned. So did they sin? Yes, they did sin. And okay. Any thoughts for letter C? No thoughts? Okay. Let's move on to Thursday, the last subtopic, written for our time. Letter A question, how do we know that this warning about the spiritual consequences was written specifically for us today? How do we know? Verse 15 of Psalms 106 says, and he gave them their request, but sent leanness into their soul. So what happened to their soul? Leanness, it thinned out. So is it good to eat meat? No. Our note says, it has been written for our admonition upon whom the ends of the world are come. If we pass by these cautions and warnings, developing the same traits of character developed by the Israelites, what excuse can we plead? So as I have said again, we don't have any more excuse because these things are already written for us. Letter B. When preparing to enter the earthly Canaan, it was a sin for them to desire flesh meat. Contrast this to the life in the new earth. So what kind of life there's going to be in new earth? It's very wonderful. If you read Isaiah 11 verse 6, the wolf shall dwell with the lamb. So they're not going to eat each other anymore. It says, the wolf and the lamb shall feed together, and the lion shall eat straw like the bullock, and that shall be the serpent's meat. They shall not hurt nor destroy in all my holy mountain, saith the Lord. So the animals are not going to eat each other anymore. Even the lion will not eat the other animals. So that's kind of life that there's going to be in heaven, in the new life. So before we enter the heavenly Canaan, we should also be prepared. We should also follow and practice what the Lord has said us not to eat. Letter C, last question. What opportunity did God give on the border of the promised land, and how many actually entered there? How many? How many only entered in the promised land? Only two. Only two. Everyone died except for who? Joshua and Caleb. So there's just two left. So let us contemplate this matter. We are also journeying into what? Into the heavenly Canaan. If there are two people who survived in their time, how about us today? Remember from the past, remember the note that we read? Satan mastered on how we control our appetite. So ever since the beginning of time, from Eve, the antediluvian worlds, the Israelites, all of them fell from the power of appetite. So if we think of that, then we should be very more careful on how we deal with or control our appetite. And note, before I'm almost about to end, I'm just going to read the note. It says there, we need to look heavenward in faith. Okay. Sorry. We need to look heavenward in our faith. We are not to be discouraged because of apparent failure, nor should we be disheartened by delay. We should work cheerfully, hopefully, gratefully, believing that the earth holds in her bosom rich treasures for the faithful worker to garner stores richer than gold or silver. The mountains and hills are changing. The earth is waxing old like a garment. But the blessing of God, which spreads for his people a table in the wilderness, will never cease. So I hope this will be an object lesson to all of us to take heed the message of God, and let us pray that we will not repeat the same mistakes that Israel did. Amen. So before we sing our closing song, we're gonna pray.